Our lovable flamethrower psycho of the Sons of Caledon, Burnice, is the next S-rank character dropping after Caesar in a couple of weeks. Now with the 1.3 version update, we have been given the opportunity to test out Burnice within the story along with having full access to her kit. Of course there may be changes to her kit when she officially drops, but usually the kit tends to remain the same. So for any players that have already fallen for Burnice or aren't sure on whether you should pick her up, I'll be going through Burnice's full kit breakdown, her best team synergies, viable W engines, disk drive sets you should be farming, and ultimately, if you should summon for Burnice. Just before we jump into it, as always, would really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel for more ZenlessZoneZero content and drop a like if you enjoyed the video.
So warm.
Now kicking it off with Burnice's kit, as we already know, Burnice is a fire type anomaly DPS character, part of the Sons of Caledon faction, and specializes in playing as a sub DPS character. Burnice isn't exactly able to replicate the damage Jane is capable of dealing, but when it comes to the time taken to trigger an anomaly, Burnice is on another level, which makes her an amazing sub DPS character as she will take up hardly any field time. As for Burnice's core passives, they both play a massive role in Burnice being as great as she is in the sub DPS position. The first core passive revolves around Burnice obtaining heat through using energy, and once she has acquired 50 heat minimum, she will be able to enter the nitro fuel cocktail state. Whilst Burnice is in this state, and once she has inflicted the scorched effect on an enemy, which would be through either the mixed flame blend basic attack, EX special attack, chain attack, or the ultimate, alongside Burnice's allies dealing damage and building up their own anomaly, afterburn will be triggered every 1.5 seconds dealing fire damage and building up fire anomaly. You will also be able to visually see Burnice's heat deplete from her gauge as her allies trigger afterburn. So it is going to be very easy to keep track on when you would need to switch Burnice back onto the field. So this core passive pretty much allows Burnice to be an amazing off-field damage dealer, as she will synergize perfectly with main DPS characters like Jane that require majority of field time. As for the second core passive, when another character on the team shares the same faction as Burnice or is an anomaly character, the fire anomaly build-up rate of Burnice's mixed flame blend basic attack and both variations of the EX special attack will be increased by a massive 65% when dealing damage or when afterburn is triggered. Now, as simple as an increase in fire anomaly build-up rate sounds, 65% is a massive bonus, and it allows Burnice to trigger burn literally in seconds, which further increases her value as a sub DPS character since she just needs a few seconds on field to trigger burn and to inflict the scorched effect. Now going over Burnice's abilities themselves, the mixed flame blend basic attack can only be activated within the nitro fuel cocktail state, and once you activate it, Burnice spins continuously dealing fire damage around her and will end the attack with a small explosion of fire damage. Also, you do have the ability to go straight into the double shot EX special attack right after the small explosion if you immediately activate the skill, making this a crazy combo dealing fire damage and building up fire anomaly. Now as I keep on mentioning, Burnice does have two EX special attacks. The first one consisting of Burnice using one flamethrower when you activate the skill, but if you have enough energy, you can activate the skill once more to use both flamethrowers, allowing Burnice to deal a lot more fire damage along with triggering burn significantly quicker. So preferably, even though it consumes much more heat, you would always want to use the double shot EX special attack, purely for the sake of getting in the trigger burn and getting out as quick as possible. Now also, the anti-interrupt level is increased when using either EX special attack, and the damage taken is reduced by 40%. So even when Burnice is left in a vulnerable position, she wouldn't easily be interrupted and wouldn't take as much damage as usual, which is pretty much going to allow playing with Burnice feel like a smooth experience overall. As for the chain attack, of course it will be capable of dealing good fire damage and building up quite a lot of fire anomaly, but it also provides the ability to follow up with the double shot EX special attack, which again will be a great combo you would always want to pull off if you end the chain attack with Burnice. Lastly, with the ultimate, as expected, it deals a good amount of damage and will build up fire anomaly insanely quick. However, upon activation, Burnice will obtain 50 heat, which will fill half the gauge, and as Burnice leaps into the air, a quick assist will be available, and if it is activated, Burnice will remain in the air spraying her flames for even longer. So of course you would always want to activate the quick assist to obtain the most value from the ultimate and to just be more efficient in dealing damage. Now moving on to Burnice's team synergies, since Burnice wants to be either with characters from the Sons of Caledon or other anomaly characters, a team I mention quite often being Jane, Burnice and Caesar I believe would be the best team and arguably might be the best team in the game. As I mentioned earlier, Burnice is going to synergize perfectly with a main DPS character like Jane, since Burnice requires hardly any field time and Jane requires the most field time on the team. Then with Caesar, she also takes up little field time, as she is capable of providing her thick shield with a massive attack buff very easily through multiple abilities. So with Burnice inflicting the scorched effect on enemies and Jane inflicting flinch on enemies, it even allows for those moments when you are attacking with Caesar to also be capable of dealing quite a lot of damage. Overall, having Jane and Burnice being capable of triggering disorder often, which is going to lead to enormous amounts of damage being dealt to enemies, alongside Caesar pretty much playing as a stun character and a support character is going to make this an extremely valuable team. That being said, it is one hell of an expensive team as all three characters are S-rank characters and the fact they are back to back doesn't really help. So as unlikely as it would be to get a hold of this team, it would be an amazing team to play with if you are able to. Alternatively, instead of Caesar, Seth, Rina or even Lucy would be great substitutes. With Seth, he kinda works like a scaled down version of Caesar but is more tailored towards disorder teams, since the shield he generates is able to provide up to 100 anomaly proficiency to allies, along with his second core passive reducing the anomaly build-up resistance on enemies to all attributes by 20%. So with Jane and Burnice on the team besides Seth, they would both be dealing much more damage through triggering anomalies and will be capable of building them up much quicker, which makes Seth an amazing support for the disorder team. With Rina, she is the only Electro character on the team, so she would only be able to buff allies' pen ratio by up to 30%, which is a valuable buff overall that allows both Jane and Burnice to ignore defense on enemies. Also, Rina does take up hardly any field time since any attack by Rina would provide the pen ratio buff to allies, allowing you to have much more time with either Jane and Burnice on the field. Lastly, with Lucy, not only will she be able to deal damage off field just like Burnice, but she is also capable of providing up to a 600 flat attack buff to allies, which is going to be great for anomaly characters like Jane and Burnice. Additionally, she can help in triggering burn alongside Burnice, but I doubt Burnice is going to need any help in doing so. So there are quite a few options you would be able to run instead of Caesar and they would synergize quite nicely. But of course Caesar would be the best character by far. Now if you are thinking about replacing Jane, you do have two options being either Grace or Piper, but the damage drop off from Jane to either of these two is going to be massive. Now there is only one other team aside from the disorder team that Burnice would find success on, and that would be the Mono Fire team consisting of Soldier 11, Burnice and Lucy. With Soldier 11 using her best disc drive set being the Inferno Metal set, the 4-piece effect provides 28% crit rate when hitting a burning enemy. So with Burnice on the team being capable of triggering burn insanely quick, the uptime for the 28% crit rate buff is going to be much more consistent, and since Soldier 11 is an attacker, just like Jane, she will want majority of field time. So Burnice is going to synergize amazingly alongside Soldier 11, and with Lucy buffing their attack and also dealing damage off field, it does make it a solid team overall. Then of course later on you'll want to consider replacing Lucy with Lighter, as he is going to synergize the most with Soldier 11 being a fire type stun character. So if you are a Soldier 11 main and decide to pick up both Burnice and Lighter, they are likely going to synergize extremely well together and will likely be a powerful team. Now going over Burnice's viable W engines, as always the signature W engine is going to be the best option if you want the best build for the character. With Burnice's signature W engine, I can only assume it will buff energy regen when off field, as we have seen with other W engines, and especially since Burnice is an off field specialist. Also, it will likely feature an anomaly proficiency main stat, as afterburn does scale off anomaly proficiency. Then some sort of damage increase that would be ideal for Burnice will also be featured. So it is definitely going to be the best choice for Burnice, and you likely should pick it up if you intend to utilize Burnice for a while. However, there are a few alternatives if you don't pick up the signature W engine, such as Rainforest Gourmet, which has an anomaly proficiency main stat, along with receiving an attack buff of up to 40% at max refinement when consuming energy. So considering Burnice would receive a large attack buff for just consuming energy, which would be her main objective as it will allow her to enter the fusion cocktail state, means that this would be a great W engine for Burnice. The only other viable W engine with an anomaly proficiency main stat would be the Electro Lip Gloss, which is a Battle Pass W engine. However, if you do have a hold of this W engine, it will be a decent option, considering it can increase the equipper's attack by 10% and increase the damage dealt by 15% when there are enemies inflicted with an attribute anomaly on the field. As for the W engines that can increase anomaly proficiency through the passive, first up would be the S-Rank W engine Fusion Compiler, which features a 24% pen ratio main stat, along with being able to increase attack by 12%, and when using either the special attack or EX special attack, the equipper's anomaly proficiency can stack up to 75 for 8 seconds. Lastly, we have the Weeping Gemini, which provides an attack percent main stat, and whenever an ally inflicts attribute anomaly on an enemy up to 4 times, the equipper gains up to a massive 184 anomaly proficiency and max refinement. However, the effect ends once the enemy recovers from a stun or is defeated, which makes it more useful for when you're going up against bosses. Now, I would advise to use a W engine that provides anomaly proficiency as the main stat, as it will allow for more consistency. But all of these W engines are viable and will be great for Burnice. Again, the signature will definitely be the best option, so if you do intend to utilize Burnice long term, it would be wise to consider picking up the signature W engine. Now, as for the disc drive sets to farm for Burnice, without a doubt you'll want to farm the brand new Chaos Jazz disc drive set, given the 2-piece provides 30 anomaly proficiency, and as for the 4-piece, fire damage would be increased by 15%, and when the character is off field, the damage caused by EX special attacks and assist attacks are increased by 20%. So this set is literally made for Burnice, as it is capable of buffing Burnice's damage both on field and off field, which makes it a perfect 4-piece set. Now, as for the 2-piece set to go along with the Chaos Jazz set, you do have a few options. First and likely the best would be the Swing Jazz set, since the 2-piece would provide 20% energy regen, which will help in activating the EX special attack much more often. Alternatively, you do have the Inferno Metal 2-piece, which is able to provide 10% more fire damage for a bit more DPS. However, utilizing Burnice as intended, the Swing Jazz 2-piece would provide the most value, as you really aren't relying on Burnice's damage, but for her to jump in to trigger burn and jump back out as quick as possible for the main DPS to then take the field. So the Swing Jazz 2-piece would provide Burnice with the energy needed to do exactly that as often as she would need. Now, as for the main set to prioritize, the 4th disk drive would definitely want anomaly proficiency. The 5th disk drive would want fire damage bonus, but attack percent is also viable, and as for the final disk drive, either anomaly mastery or attack percent, but since energy regen is going to be a valuable stat for Burnice, possibly energy regen might also be viable. As for the substats being the same for every other anomaly DPS character, you would want anomaly proficiency, attack percent, pen and flat attack. Now finally, should you summon for Burnice? As always, it does depend on your account, since if you have characters like Jane or Soldier 11 and you actively use them, then Burnice would be an amazing addition to your account. If you don't have either character, then you may want to consider skipping Burnice, as there really aren't many teams for Burnice to be used effectively on. However, if you do really want Burnice and you don't have either Jane or Soldier 11, you can throw her onto a Sons of Caledon team till you do pull either. So you can still utilize her on a team, but it's just with characters like Jane and Soldier 11 you would definitely bring out the most in Burnice. Now, another reason you may want to hold off on summoning at least when Burnice drops would be to see how good exactly Yanagi turns out to be, as she is confirmed to be an electric anomaly DPS character, and considering the Chaos Jazz set is made for both fire and electric off-field damage dealers, Yanagi will likely be in direct competition with Burnice. That being said, I don't believe there will be a significant difference between them. But just to be on the safe side, I would advise waiting until more info on Yanagi drops if it hasn't already when Burnice officially drops. Overall, Burnice is an amazing character and as of now is the best off-field damage dealer in the game, which does hold a significant amount of value with just that title alone. So if you simply just like Burnice, then you would not regret picking her up, as she has an amazing kit to go alongside her amazing design. And with that, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Would really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel for more ZenlessZoneZero content, and if you enjoyed the video, drop a like. Also drop a comment down below on your thoughts on Burnice and whether you will be picking her up or skipping. And yeah, hope to catch you guys later.